This is the AI Hackathon. My name is Sean Brennan. I joined the Bio Protocol almost 5 months ago to lead a new team around agentic science. And after months of work, we now have a few different code repositories that are open source, and we've invited many developers to join a 2-month-long hackathon to kickstart basically the idea of agentic science. So that's creating plugins, that's creating new like internal logic for how the agents think. And so this presentation is about the BioAgents and how to build them. There's going to be a more dev-focused tutorial tomorrow, but this is more of an overview. And so let's dive in. Just really quickly, Bio Protocol is about accelerating science through the creation of BioDAOs, which are tokenized DAOs around research. So each BioDAO has a specific domain of science that it is researching, either for basic research or with the aim of creating therapeutic products. And so BioDAOs have existed for almost 2 years, and there's around 12 or 13 right now live. And so this example is for VitaDAO. And so these DAOs have a vetting and funding process. They're creating IP, and the proceeds of the eventual sale of that IP go back into the DAO. So BioDAOs have existed for a long time, and BioDAOs can thrive and flourish even without AI. But because the recent advances in AI over the past years, we have to ask the question, how can AI accelerate what the BioDAOs are doing, both in terms of how the humans coordinate the different kind of like soft social layers of a DAO. How do they get more funding? How do they get marketing? But even more important, and what most of this talk is about, is around the science aspect of it. And so we've created these agents called BioAgents that are meant to be very good at specific research steps, discrete steps of knowledge work. And when you start to chain together discrete steps of knowledge work, it starts to look like the scientific process. And so not many people in the world are trying to do this, and we'll dive into that in a sec. So, BioAgents. The Bio Protocol is pioneering agentic science over planetary scale compute to increase the throughput of thought. This is a term I invented to kind of start to measure what it looks like when you have a parallelized fleet of agents all hooked together and all able to complete scientific tasks. So we're going to give these agents, we're going to give the BioDAOs the ability to send tasks to the agents, and those agents will complete the task, send the output to the human researcher, or continue on to the next task. So in this way, we're giving these BioDAOs not just one agent, but many agents, because the tasks of the scientific tasks are, in the field of biology and biotech and bioscience as a whole, more parallelizable than they are in maybe like DeFi or other aspects of maybe like a sales process for agents. So when we talk about scientific agents, we want to create one agent that is very good at doing specific tasks, but as soon as we have one agent that is well suited for that and is expert in that process, a lab, if we give it to a lab, for example, it's going to ask for 2 agents. It's going to want to double the speed of its process. And so we're preparing for a fleet of BioAgents that are able to handle that. And separately, but similarly, we're also building what's called core agents, which are for the DAO's coordination needs. Both of these are built on top of the ELIZA framework. And if you hadn't heard of that before, we will talk about that soon. But this is like the best kind of a mental model for what we're building. Here's a quote from the founder of OpenAI. We expect the impact of AGI to be uneven. Although some industry will change a little, scientific progress will likely be much faster than today. This impact will surpass everything else. So given that, I think one of the ideas that I have is that so much of the world is compute. When you hear about AI, you hear about training new models, decentralized training, centralized training, open source, closed source. All of them are caring about creating foundational models, which are like Anthropic Claude, OpenAI's GBTs. All of these models are getting better and better over time, but there's kind of two scenarios. Either they'll continue to accelerate, and you have this idea of artificial general intelligence or artificial superintelligence, and that is one scenario of the world, and the world will look way different in 5 years, and those agents will be able to do science and basically do all this coding themselves in a way. The other scenario is that if the research into foundational models starts to plateau, and all this compute that has been doing basically the task to train, like the machine learning task to train models, all that compute is going to be incrementally less and less valuable as the agent's intelligence starts to plateau. So what we're preparing for is, with all that compute, what are they going to put it towards? And what I posit is that the next best thing to work to put that compute towards is actually running the models that they just created. And so all these different data centers and compute providers around the world are going to realize that they can start to run agents instead of training better agents, if that makes sense. So what this quote points out is that when you have many, many different agents, the necessary thing to do is give them a task, and give them the prompt, and give them the tools to do their job. And the job of advancing science, I think, is going to be the most valuable job out there. And the point of this hackathon is that many different agent frameworks right now have not had the scientific tools or the different scientific integrations, either like Web2, you could call it like trad science. There's not that many integrations for agents right now. And so one of the goals of this hackathon is to increase the surface area of how agents can interact with the scientific world. For the live stream, these are the 3 main repositories that we'll be working on. It's on the GitHub bio-xyz, and there's these 3 repositories: plugin BioAgent, BioAgents, and core agent. And to go a little bit more in detail, when you talk about scientific agents, what do they do? Here I'll go through this quickly, but basically the ideation of new science. It can be analyzing existing literature, finding gaps in literature, and then you basically force them to have an insight by prompting the agent to, you try to force a hypothesis to be generated from the existing data set. Given almost any paper, any 2 papers, a knowledge graph, you can ask, just like you can ask a person, what are the next steps here? And so a lot of the hypothesis generation is about asking an agent, what are the next steps? What would you propose to experiment on this set of data to discover something new about the data set? And then there's experiment design. There's the statistical process once you get the experimental results back. And there's even like writing papers. This is a 2-month-long hackathon, so we're starting with the very initial, like there's the top 2 steps, and trying to focus on the knowledge graphs and hypothesis generation part of it. That's the very start, and it's basically a hard problem to write a paper that is valuable and sound, and, well, it's a challenge to get there, I'll just say that. Something that we've developed over the past weeks is what's called the BioAgent plugin. It's built on ELIZA version 2, which just recently is coming out. It's an ELIZA plugin tailored for researchers and bioscientists for converting scientific papers into structured knowledge graphs and knowledge assets. These knowledge assets integrate seamlessly into RDF triple scores, such as Orton Trails DKG and the OxyGraph, which is based on Sparkle, it's called. It's a knowledge graph term. And so this enhances data management and advances biological research capabilities of the generic ELIZA agent. Some of the details of how it works is that we're continuously monitoring a Google Drive for new scientific documents that are uploaded to it. Upon detection, it automatically transforms the papers into a structured knowledge asset and incorporates them into a dynamic knowledge graph. These knowledge graphs are they're perfectly well suited for other agents to kind of traverse them and look at them, and they exploits graphs to generate novel biological hypotheses about the graph itself. And so it supports almost any domain of science. There's a little bit opinionated about the biological, it's something called ontologies. So this initial version is well suited for biology problems, and including genetics, molecular biology, and synthetic biology. And then one last part is that we have another LLM that's actually grading and has a rubric to score each hypothesis as it's generated. And so you have an automated way of ranking the hypotheses that are generated. There's a lot to improve here as far as I call it the throughput of thought. It's about increasing the speed of each step of this process, where we want to be able to take a corpus of papers and process it into a knowledge graph very, very fast. We want to be able to take a knowledge graph and process it into thousands of hypotheses very, very fast. And then we want to score those hypotheses also, of course, very, very fast. So this, like each agent can do those steps in one, say like one time cycle. And so we want to prepare the system so that we can set up many different agents and get these tasks done very, very, very fast. So because for right now, like we started with the base in the repository is a set of papers around longevity science. But we'll quickly be adding to that with more domains of science around the BioDAOs, which is around many different things. So expect to see multiple like example knowledge graphs. And we invite you in the hackathon to use this to add in, basically, create your own knowledge graphs based on the domain of science that you're most familiar with. I think for this hackathon, there are many people who are coming from the Web3 crypto blockchain side of things. So we're asking you to basically learn this AI framework, and then the mentors we have are incredible, they're world class, and they have the bioscience, the meta science, and they have that knowledge that they have happily and graciously made themselves welcome to share their expertise with you. So it's really, BioAgents are at the intersection between blockchain, AI, and biotech. And so if you're missing some parts of that, please, we have the resources to learn the other parts. And all this is, again, all this is very new. And so just by taking a few steps forward, you'll be suddenly ahead of the world, or like ahead of anyone else in the world, because no one else is really combining these things in this way yet. So talked about it a little bit so far, but one of the goals for BioProtocol this year is to create a fleet of 1 million BioAgents. And we can do that by each agent runs in a container, and these containers are much easier to run than like a traditional like machine learning compute job. So they're actually easily to be parallelized across global compute. And this concept is very similar to AlphaFold at home. Maybe audience participation. Who's heard of AlphaFold? Great, most of the room. It has had 3 versions so far. It's a collaboration between Google DeepMind and a company called Isomorphic. It just won the Nobel Prize in Chemistry for 2024. And the company behind it just raised like $600 million. And because it's pretty incredible, they had basically 2 million people around the world agreed to donate their computer time, their extra compute, electricity, towards the public good of solving protein folding. And while the actual code of AlphaFold is closed source, they've made the data set result public. And so researchers can use that data set. But the actual code is closed source. So what we have to ask is that how many, so they have 2 million users around the world, approximately, as part of AlphaFold. But you have to ask the question, using blockchain tokenomics, how can you incentivize more than 2 million? Would it be 20 million, 200 million? It changes it from being a donation base to being a like more game theory, like profit-seeking motives for participants around the world. but we think that this can allow the fleet of agents in our network to grow even larger than AlphaFold. So the bio token is going to be used to stake on agents. To be clear, like this hackathon itself, it won't be using the bio token, but the end goal is to have these agents running in a global compute cloud. And because there's a permissionless nature to it, the bio token is used to stake on agents, and we can have basically extra rules around ensuring that the agents behave in the correct way. And when we have an overcapacity of agents in this like giant fleet, first we aim to serve the BioDAOs for their needs, but when we have an overcapacity, like the worst thing that an agent can be is idle. Like if it's just an agent is just sitting there, not doing anything, that's just wasted time, wasted compute, electricity, all the things. So we have to work with like external parties and basically invite them to send tasks into our fleet of BioAgents, and then the agents will just quickly complete that task, get the result back to the researcher, and they're happy. But this is, in a way, similar to what, again, like Google's doing with AI co-scientist, is a thing that Google launched a few weeks ago. So they have, again, like you can chat with their website. This is just like a test preview so far. Everyone here should apply for it. Let me know if you get access. I'm curious. It is just, again, like a closed source version. There's privacy concerns, data concerns. So again, we're doing the open source version of that. And as we have this giant fleet, third parties like biotech researchers, labs, even just like passionate individuals will be able to send tasks to our fleet easier than they can spin up a whole fleet of agents themselves and get these giant scientific tasks done themselves. Like using bio and using our fleet is going to be the easiest way to do that. The one thing I want to point out is that we're creating these agents, and again, like think about the development. When you're developing agents, there's a specific loop that the agent can be part of. And so the loop can be ingesting research papers, just to take the top of this example. It can be processing research papers one by one, confirming that's right, fixing it, and there's, again, for the hackathon, there's ways to improve just the process research paper step. There's definitely projects that can spend weeks on this, and perfecting it would be awesome. But then once you complete like one step, you can move to the next step. And so once you process the papers, you add them to a knowledge graph. And what I want to point out is that each one of these steps can either be run by itself, if like a BioDAO or a task, like just one of these steps can be useful for if it's like the bottleneck, or a human researcher is like missing the expertise to complete the step. We want to be able to have the BioAgent basically complete that one specific discrete step. And yeah, so there's knowledge graph, hypothesis generation, and going forward, once you have a hypothesis, of course you need to test it, and you need to design an experiment. And one of the cool things about ELIZA plugins is that it makes it very easy to call an outside API. And so there's a new suite of companies that are cropping up that are called like cloud labs, or they do in silico validation, which just means like on chip. And so the agent, when it comes up with an experiment, well, it can't actually affect the world, so you might think, oh, like that's done. They have to pass it off to back to the human researcher, and they have to complete the experiment by themselves. But actually, no. These labs have APIs where you can just send an API request to the lab and receive within hours, days, weeks, depending on the experiment, you receive the result. And so this is a new way to let the agents like affect the world and complete experiments. This is super new. This is an active area of research. The hackathon itself is not, basically we don't expect the hackers to complete the step. We're going to offer some tools and work with some companies to try to help this towards the end of the hackathon. But again, the hackathon itself is focused on the top 3 steps here. But to complete the process, when you have experimental results and they're positive or null, we want to put those results on-chain and focus on like this new idea of on-chain science, where we can be creating attestations and also IP NFTs. There's the sister company to Bio, it's called Molecule, and they have both something called proof of invention and IP NFTs that are useful for agents when they reach this step of having proven experimental results in the case of IP NFTs, and proof of invention can actually happen earlier, and we'll talk about how a team can integrate with that either later today or tomorrow. We'll have a guide for that. And one of the points of this is that we want to increase the throughput of how many basically scientific ideas reach that final step, like intellectual property productization or sale of it. We think that the agents can help the BioDAOs get there faster. They can help external parties get there faster. And the really sci-fi idea is when you have all these steps working, we can have basically a fleet of agents start to process these steps and run through these steps all by themselves. And that's the idea of autonomous science, which we're not there yet, but you can see, like, as these agents get smarter, as they have more tools, as we perfect the prompts and the benchmarks and like all these parts, we can start to put all these things together and just run this end to end. And what you have is a system where you just basically input crypto or stablecoins, or basically you just input resources, and the agent system thinks through these steps, thinks through problems, it does all these knowledge work steps, and then the end result of putting in resources is that you get IP, you get basic research, you get further scientific advancement. And it's pretty close to happening, so the hackathon is focusing on the first parts, and really super excited to get towards the last parts, but it's a hard problem. So I want to point out the main prize track for the hackathon has a reward of $75,000. It is focused on projects that utilize the existing tools and connect them to the ELIZA framework. If you contribute to the on-chain publication of scientific research artifacts, that's highly favored. We really encourage you to speak to the judges and share ideas and ideate on what you want to build in these first days and weeks. Because there's a list of project ideas, and we just want to make sure you're off to the right start. So the focus really is to generate meaningful scientific outputs, emphasizing information organization, knowledge graph generation, and hypothesis generation. We do have something we want to emphasize this first few days is a short plugin sprint where there's many different ELIZA plugins. We're going to have an in-depth tutorial on this tomorrow, but there's pretty simple to fork an ELIZA plugin and work with it, and we have examples. And there's hundreds of them right now, many around blockchain, around connected different APIs. And what's lacking is any sort of scientific APIs. There's one for Origin Trail, which we're using, but there's not much connection between the agents and the Web 2 traditional science world. And so we're having a sprint to create more of them in the very beginning. And then there is a checkpoint at the Solana event in New York City. It starts May 19th, goes to the 23rd. And so that's in about 5 weeks, where there'll be a mid-hackathon checkpoint. And there's also a prize associated with teams then. And the final grand prize will be prizes rewarded in DC Berlin. So back here in 2 months will be the final judging. A few more things to talk about. So far I've talked about the scientific agents called BioAgents. There's something else that we see necessary to build in order to scale the number of BioDAOs. Again, I said there's on the order of 10 BioDAOs right now, but we'd really like to see that number 10x, 100x to go to 100 BioDAOs, 1,000 BioDAOs, because every research lab could be a BioDAO. And so every passionate individual, everyone could be a BioDAO. And so what we're seeing is that there's a human scaling factor and a bottleneck in that each BioDAO is almost like a mini research lab, a mini startup that has to care about token price, has to care about marketing, has to care about coordinating the DAO, has to do all these things that most Web2 researchers have not been familiar with. And so we're creating agents that have those skills. Again, it's based on ELIZA, they have plugins, but they have, instead of scientific skills, they have skills to assist anyone with basically running a BioDAO. So this is a separate prize track. And again, like it's still using the ELIZA framework, and if you're familiar with one, you're familiar with the other. But we think there's really cool things to build here around onboarding community, around automating multi-steps of marketing based on, say, like a electronic lab notebook or someone's GitHub activity. There's all these things to do here, and we're excited to see what people come up with. And it can be just kind of a final note is that we're envisioning this as both an active assistant where you're chatting with an AI agent. It's turn-based, kind of like ChatGPT, where it's very knowledgeable about both the science of what you're building and also the guide on how we think it's best to create and build a BioDAO. It also can have a passive assistance where it's just maybe kind of sitting and listening inside of your Discord or Telegram, GitHub issues, and is able to take data from one source and work on it and convert it to another source, which just creates helpful side effects and like positive side effects for what you're doing, and just feels like magic and will help the BioDAOs. The last part, I want to talk about something called scientific foundational models. Foundational models are what we usually call like LLMs. It's the OpenAI's like O1 version, ChatGPT, Claude, like all these are called foundational models. And there's now a few different scientific foundational models that are basically not only fine-tuned, but actually like trained from the very beginning to be experts in a specific domain of science. And that can be like actually modeling, like they have a world model of the physics and biochemistry and all this. And so they're able to have better answers and able to like traverse a knowledge graph and understand not just at a ChatGPT level, but they have a deep ingrained scientific knowledge. And so there's a recent company I pulled this quote from called Open Athena, where there'll be critical infrastructure for a new era of major scientific discoveries, and we have to test this hypothesis. We have to start to build with them. And one thing that help with the clicker maybe. Oh, okay. A few slides are missing. I'll upload this as well. There is so what I want to talk about is I wanted to point out two foundational models. One is called Evo2 by Arc Institute. So there's multiple foundational models out there, but these are kind of the two I would look at as a hacker and we're starting to build with. One's called Evo2 by Arc Institute, which is a model trained on basically genetics and biology and DNA. And cool. Yep. So yeah, maybe we can just. Okay, now it's working. Cool. So Evo2 is a model that is the best model yet for biology. NVIDIA, Stanford, UC Berkeley, UCSF built this, and it's open source. The bottom text there is trained on over 9.3 trillion tokens, in this case nucleotides, from over 128,000 genomes across the 3 domains of life. And basically this came out last month, and it's just completely underexplored. Probably hundreds of startups can be built on this and use this and work with this. And so I want to invite hackers to, basically most of the code we're using, we'll use OpenAI or other open source models for the, how to complete tasks and actions and uses tools. But I want to explore the idea of creating plugins that when the task is related to, in this case, biology and DNA, the model uses, instead of OpenAI's, it uses this Evo2 model. And I think we can really see powerful results that come from this. And the other one I want to highlight is called TX Gemma, which came out just last week or a week and a half ago by Google, which has had state-of-the-art results on reasoning-intensive chemistry and biology tasks. And so this is open source. We're working with a few different kind of hosting companies to host the model for hackers. We should get this working. And it's just, it's amazing at answering questions around anything around therapeutic drug discovery and say the toxicity of chemicals and whether something has a certain docking site, and it's just basically an expert in anything around drug discovery. So this is something that is super powerful. No one's really hacked on this before, and these models just came out. And so I think it's really fertile ground for hackers to build on. The other piece of it is we have amazing mentors and judges, as I said before. So we have a few different ways to chat with them, and they'll have office hours throughout the weeks and months. We'll have a few talks from them later today. And lastly, I think the sponsor of the hackathon are an incredible group of companies, and they have made themselves available to help out every hacker as well. Finally, you really should use the code-generating AI tools that have been coming out. Cursor, Windsurf is more developer-focused. There's other ones. But there's a proper techniques that we've shared in the documentation on how to get the best results from this. Interestingly, I think yesterday, the CEO of Shopify, one of the largest companies in the world, sent out an internal memo that he shared publicly about how he's mandating that every employee start to use AI in their job, and it's going to be part of quarterly reviews, and basically experimenting with AI is not just for developers, but it's for everyone. And I think Coinbase is also implementing the same thing. And so basically, if you're a developer and you maybe bounced off of using Cursor or Windsurf, these are better tools now, and you will for sure accelerate how fast you can code. So to wrap it up in a quick summary, agentic science is a new field with increasing capabilities and throughput of technical thought. The Bio Launchpad is a upgrade of the bio funding model, where it's permissionlessly allows curation and funding for any size team. And a BioAgent fleet will speed up the production of testable insights and experimental results for every BioDAO and biotech firm. And so what we can do in the hackathon, similar to that, you can either use the BioAgent plugin we built or fork it and improve it. You can implement different foundational models and integrations to create many new ELIZA plugins. You can use the BioAgent repo. So we have the plugin, and then we have a different BioAgent repo that's more about the knowledge graph creation and hypothesis generation. You can improve the knowledge graph and the hypothesis generation and testing. And use the resources we have available for you. Thank you very much for listening. We have a few more talks. If you're not part of it yet, everyone listening on the live stream, we have a Discord, discord.com/invite/bioxyz. Please join it. The main communication and everything around the hackathon will be communicated through this platform.